here's some things or a way I like to structure the meeting for results delivery. I call it the Power Grid 3 filter method, right? So when I show risk numbers to a client, I want to show them risk without their current IT services. I want to show them risk with their current IT and maybe cyber services. And then I want to show them the risk with what we're recommending. Okay. So what does that mean? So first, risk without current IT services. So we go back to our segmentation document. Your IT is doing backups, MFA, AV, like those are all cyber risk reduction things. So you could say this is how we pre-answer the "we thought you did that for us" question. So I say, hey, Mr. Customer, right? Your risk without any of our IT services would be 95% because you're really not doing much past that. Now with our current IT services and our current package that you have, we're doing backups, this. That reduces your risk about 30%. You're at a 70% risk environment. Okay. Now, we typically like to see customers in the 30% risk range. Again, remember, we're not asking them to do everything. We're asking them to lower their risk to an acceptable level, and we'll have discussions around that. But what we say is there's this delta then between your current spend or your current service package and the one we're recommending of 30 to 40% of risk, and give them tangible outcomes. Like we see clients in this risk range where you're currently at dealing with like business email compromise or even ransomware because you don't have certain areas locked down. So again, we didn't create this world, but we have service packages to address this risk and to get you down to this risk number. So you're going to make all these recommendations. And I say it's easier. We all know it's easier to poke holes in something than to come up with something from a blank sheet of paper. So really, you're just giving this as like a starting point or a block of marble with the client to have some discussions. So be ready to have discussions around the changes. And if they want to have that discussion, that's a really good sign. So if you get the question of like, okay, I get it, but like, what if we wanted to be at like a 40% risk instead of a 30? What's the difference? That's a really good question, right? Because they're already seeing kind of that they want to move the needle. So don't get frustrated. Don't be like, oh, they're not, they want to try and nickel. No, this is good. Let's have the conversation. Oh, well, if we can run some numbers and if we remove this is something we really think you need to do because it protects this critical business process, right? That's that why, that's that narrative. But if we didn't want to do that day one because it's a budget thing, if we had to like shorten this, here's the really critical stuff we want you to do. Now you'll be at a 50% risk. You'll still have some residual risk around these areas. And so we'll have to plan for that, right? Now you're creating like this stewardship with the client that I like to talk about where you're, flight planning that stuff. It's very similar to a VCIO conversation at that point, right? So that's kind of the way you want to approach it. The other mistake I see providers making is there's no clear recommendation section. So we should probably say like, oh, you have all this list of all these things you need to do. You just need to do them all. Like, okay, well, what does that mean? Crunch it down based on your business. Like we don't think you need a pen test. You don't have a regulatory requirement for it, but we do think you need MDR, right? So we're going to shrink. We're going to say, here's all the things we could recommend. Here's what we are recommending because that addresses those critical business processes. And then make sure you position it like, hey, this is an ongoing process, right? Like we talked about positioning that VCSO as like the why and the leader of the program. So when we give them their cyber quote for these new services, it's going to have VCSO and it's going to say, oh yeah, you remember that. That's the leader that we need for the program, right? It's already positioned for them. So it's not even a conversation. So what can we remove? VCSO is not on the table, right? Because that's how we continue this process with the client, right? And so last thing then, obviously, come to a consensus. What do they want to do? And then make sure the client gets the report and that you're like, hey, we're going to move forward with X, Y, and Z, or, oh no, we're not going to move forward at this time. And then continue to repeat that conversation and that cadence with your VCSO package if they do sign up, or in your SBR cadences just to remind them that they have this big number that's out there, right? So when they do get breached, they don't come and, crucify you for it. All right, I hope that was helpful. Now, if you want to take what you've just learned and integrate it into a full spectrum VCSO operating system, as well as learn how to package, price, and scale your VCSO offer effectively, check out the link below and learn about how the PowerGrid VCSO system can transform the way that your MSP delivers VCSO services and supercharges the entire revenue lifecycle for your cybersecurity program.